Welcome, weary traveler. Come in from the biting wind. Shake the snow from your cloak and find a place here by the fire. Tonight, we are not in the modern world. We are stepping back 700 years into the deep winter of the 14th century. Imagine, if you will, a landscape painted entirely in shades of white and iron grey. The forests are silent, their branches heavy with snow, standing like frozen sentinels against a pale, watery sky. In the distance, rising from the mist, stands the castle. It is a massive thing, a mountain of man-made stone. In summer, it is a symbol of power and dominance. But now, in the heart of winter, it is something else entirely. It is a shell, a stone beast that must be tamed and heated if life is to survive within its belly. To understand life here, you must first understand the cold. It is not the cold we know today, which can be banished with the turn of a dial. This is a living, breathing presence. The castle walls are 6 feet thick, built to withstand catapults and battering rams, but they cannot stop the frost. In fact, the stone holds the cold. It absorbs the freezing temperatures of the night and radiates them back into the rooms during the day. Touching the wall of a corridor in January feels like touching a block of ice carved from a frozen river. As we cross the drawbridge, the wood creaks underfoot, stiff with frost. The moat below is a silent sheet of jagged white ice. We pass under the heavy portcullis and enter the courtyard. Here the wind is less fierce, cut by the high curtain walls, but the air is sharp. It smells of wood smoke, a scent that will follow us everywhere. It smells of wet wool, of horses, and of the raw, metallic scent of snow. Let us move quickly now, out of the open air, and push open the heavy oak doors to the heart of the castle, the Great Hall. This is the sanctuary. The Great Hall is the largest room in the castle, the center of social life, and most importantly, the center of heat. Look up. The ceiling vanishes into shadows high above, where heavy timber beams cross like the ribs of a giant whale. In the center of the room, on a stone hearth, roars a massive fire. There are no chimneys yet in the center of this hall. The smoke rises in a thick gray column, drifting lazily up to a louver, a vent in the roof. The air here is hazy, filled with a bluish mist of wood smoke. It might sting your eyes at first, but to the people of the medieval era, this smoke is the smell of survival. It means warmth. The fire is fed constantly. Servants, their hands wrapped in rough cloth, drag in entire tree trunks. Logs of oak and ash, seasoned for a year, crackle and pop, sending showers of orange sparks drifting into the gloom. This fire is the sun of the castle. The closer you are to it, the higher your status. Observe the people. In the shadows, far from the fire, near the draughty doors, huddle the lower servants. They rub their hands together, stomping their feet on the floor. Closer to the warmth, sitting on benches, are the men-at-arms and skilled craftsmen. And there, closest of all, on a raised platform called the dais, sits the Lord and his family. They are bathed in the glow, their faces flushed with heat, while those at the back of the room see only their breath misting in the air. The temperature in this vast room is a study in contrasts. Near the hearth, it is roasting hot, enough to sweat in your wool tunic. 10 paces away, it is comfortable. By the walls, where the stone leaches the heat away, your water cup might freeze over if left standing too long. This is the reality of the castle winter, a constant migration towards the heat. But the Great Hall is more than just a fireplace. It is a fortress against the silence of winter. Outside, the world is dead and quiet. Inside, there is noise. The sound of dogs fighting over scraps in the rushes on the floor. The murmur of 100 conversations. The rhythmic clatter of wooden spoons on wooden bowls. People stay here as long as they can. No one wants to leave the Great Hall. To leave is to navigate the transition zones, the corridors and stairwells. These narrow passageways are wind tunnels. There is no glass in the windows of the corridors, only wooden shutters. When the wind howls from the north, it whistles through the cracks in the shutters, carrying powdery snow that settles in the corners of the staircases. Walking from the Great Hall to a bedchamber is a sprint against the chill. You pull your cloak tight, burying your chin in your chest. You carry a candle, shielding its flame with your hand, watching your shadow stretch long and distorted against the damp stone walls. The stone sweats. Condensation from the warmer air of the day freezes on the walls at night, creating glittering patterns of frost that look like ghostly tapestries. But even in this harshness, there is a beauty, a stark, resilient beauty. The castle is a machine designed for survival. Every log burned, every door closed, every curtain drawn is a victory against the season. As the sun sets outside, far too early, barely past mid-afternoon, the Great Hall transforms. The servants bring in torches dipped in animal fat. They place them in iron sconces on the walls. The light is yellow, flickering and smoky. It casts long, dancing shadows that make the stone walls seem to move. The day's work is done. The outer world has vanished into blackness. All that exists now is this circle of light, this community of people bound together by stone and fire. They are an island of warmth in a sea of ice. Take a moment to listen. The wind is picking up outside, battering against the shutters. It sounds like a distant ocean. But here, by the fire, the logs shift and settle with a comforting crumble of glowing embers. You are safe. The stone beast has been tamed for another night. But how do they sleep? How do they make these cold, cavernous rooms livable when the fire in the Great Hall burns down to embers? That is a story of ingenuity, of textiles, and of the architecture of warmth. We leave the communal roar of the Great Hall now. We are ascending the spiral stone staircase, feeling the draught tickle our ankles. We are heading to the private quarters to see how the castle fights the cold when the doors are closed. If you were to look at a medieval castle today in its ruined state, you would see bare gray rock. You might shudder, imagining how anyone could live in such a tomb. But you are seeing the skeleton. You are missing the skin. In the winter of the 14th century, a wealthy castle did not look like stone on the inside. It looked like a box of wool. As we enter the Lord's private chamber, known as the solar, the first thing you notice is the color. The walls are not gray. They are vibrant with reds, greens, and blues. These are the tapestries. We often think of tapestries as art, as decoration to show off wealth, and they were. but their primary purpose was engineering, not aesthetics. They are the insulation. Thick, heavy woven wool hung a few inches away from the cold stone wall. This air gap is crucial. The tapestry traps a layer of stagnant air between the freezing stone and the room, creating a thermal barrier. It stops the stone from sucking the heat out of the air. When a gust of wind finds its way through a shutter, the tapestries gently sway, rippling like vertical water, catching the draft before it can reach the people sitting by the fire. A room without tapestries is a refrigerator. A room with them is a cocoon. Look down at your feet. You are not walking on cold flagstones. The floor is covered in a thick, springy layer of plant matter. These are the rushes. Dried reeds, straw, and sometimes sweet-smelling herbs like lavender, meadowsweet, or mint. In winter, this layer is laid thick, almost like a mattress covering the entire floor. It offers insulation against the ground, keeping the feet warm, but it also serves the nose. In a time when windows are sealed tight to keep heat in, the air can become stale. The crushed herbs release a faint summer-like scent every time you step on them, a memory of warmer days amidst the deep freeze. The solar is smaller than the Great Hall. It has a fireplace set into the wall, a relatively new invention in this century. It is more efficient than the open fire pit. The heat is focused, radiating directly onto the small group of people gathered here. This is where the Lord and Lady spend their winter days. The women sit close to the hearth, engaged in embroidery or spinning. Why spinning? Because winter is the season of textiles. There is no farming to be done outside, so the production of warmth becomes the primary industry. The rhythmic whir of the drop spindle is the soundtrack of the solar. They are making the very thread that will be woven into the blankets and cloaks that keep them alive. But the greatest challenge of castle life is the night. When the candles burn low and the last log breaks apart into fading coals, the temperature begins to plummet. A castle at 3 a.m. in January is a place of profound cold. How does one sleep? For the servants we saw earlier in the Great Hall, sleep is a communal act. They lie on pallets of straw near the dying embers of the central fire. They sleep in their clothes, huddled together like a litter of puppies. Shared body heat is their only defense. There is no privacy, but there is survival. For the nobility in the solar or the bedchambers, it is different. The bed is not just furniture, it is a room within a room. Look at the bed. It is massive, a 4-poster structure made of heavy oak, but you can barely see the wood. It is draped in thick, heavy curtains of wool or velvet. These are not for modesty. When you climb into bed, you draw these curtains tight, sealing yourself inside. Inside this canopy, the air volume is small. Your body heat, and the body heat of your spouse, quickly warm this small space. You are creating a microclimate. Outside the curtains, the water in the jug may freeze solid. Inside, it is warm, humid, and safe. The bedding itself is luxurious and heavy. There are sheets of linen, cold to the touch at first, but smooth, and then layer upon layer of wooling blankets. Finally, a coverlet lined with fur, a wolfskin, or perhaps the fur of a beaver. The weight of the covers alone is immense, pressing you down into the mattress. The mattress is stuffed with feathers for the rich, or straw for the less fortunate. Feathers are excellent insulators, trapping warm air underneath you. But before they enter this fortress of a bed, they use one last weapon against the cold, the warming pan. A brass pan with a long handle filled with hot coals from the fire. A servant moves it rapidly between the sheets just moments before the Lord retires. It banishes the damp chill of the linen. Imagine the feeling. You have just run from the dying fire, across the freezing floor, your breath pluming in the dark. You dive through the heavy curtains, into the nest of feathers. The sheets are hot from the coals. The heavy wool presses down on you. The smell of lavender from the floor rushes, lingers in the air. You can hear the wind whistling around the stone towers outside, a lonely, high-pitched scream. But you are buried deep under layers of fur and velvet. The castle may be a stone beast, but here, in the heart of the architecture, you have carved out a warm, soft hollow. You drift off to sleep, knowing that in a few hours the first task of the morning will be the hardest of all, leaving this warmth to break the ice on the washing basin. But that is a story for the morning. For now, the castle sleeps. The sun has risen, though it is barely visible behind the heavy gray clouds that blanket the castle towers. The bell rings for the first meal. We have spoken of how the castle keeps the body warm from the outside with stone, tapestry, and fire. But survival in a medieval winter is also about keeping the body warm from the inside. To understand this, we must visit the busiest, loudest, and most aromatic place in the entire fortress, the kitchens. Often built as a separate structure, or separated by a thick stone wall to prevent fire from spreading, the kitchen is a world of its own. If the great hall is the heart of the castle, the kitchen is its stomach. Walking in here from the frozen courtyard is like walking into a tropical storm. The air is hot, thick, and humid. It hits you in the face with a physical force. It smells of wood smoke, yes, but also of rendering fat, boiling onions, roasting garlic, and the sharp metallic tang of dried blood. Winter changes the menu drastically. By January, the fresh bounty of the harvest is a distant memory. The earth outside is hard as iron. Nothing grows. The castle must survive on what was saved, hidden, and cured months ago. This is the season of the winter pantry. Look at the walls. Hanging from the rafters are not tapestries, but meats. Hams, sausages, sides of bacon. They are dark, hard, and covered in a layer of salt. Salt is the white gold of winter. It is the only thing standing between the castle inhabitants and starvation. It draws the moisture out of the meat, denying the rot a place to take hold. Before this meat can be eaten, the cooks must battle the salt. They soak the rock-hard slabs in water for hours, changing the water again and again to make the flesh palatable. Even then, winter meat has a distinct taste, chewy, intense, and always slightly briny. But the true hero of the winter table is not the meat, it is the pottage. Imagine a giant iron cauldron, black with soot, hanging over a roaring fire that never goes out. Inside bubbles a thick brown liquid. This is pottage. It is the universal fuel of the Middle Ages. For the servants, it is a simple broth of peas, beans, and onions, thickened with oats. It is hot, filling, and sits heavy in the stomach, providing the slow-burning energy needed to chop wood or haul water in the snow. For the lord and lady, the pottage is different. It is richer, cooked with wine, almond milk, and chunks of that salted venison or pork. But there is a secret in Kingland, something invisible but powerful: spices. In the medieval mind, winter is dangerous not just because it is cold, but because it disrupts the body's humors. Physicians of the time believe that winter is cold and dry. To survive it, a human body must remain hot and moist. Therefore, cooking is not just culinary, it is medicinal. The cooks add expensive spices imported from the distant, sun-baked East: pepper, ginger, cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. These are hot spices. When the Lord eats a stew heavily spiced with ginger and pepper, he feels a flush of heat spread through his chest. He believes he is literally adding fire to his blood to counteract the frost outside. Let us sit at the table in the great hall for the midday meal. The wooden trencher, a plate made of stale bread, is placed before you. The hot stew is ladled onto it. The steam rises, warming your face. You take a bite. It is salty, yes. The vegetables are soft, having been boiled for hours. But it is hot. The heat travels down your throat, radiating outward. You tear off a chunk of coarse, dark bread baked in the castle ovens. The crust is thick and hard, perfect for dipping into the broth. There is no fresh fruit, no crisp salads. Those are summer dreams. Now there are only root vegetables, turnips, parsnips, and carrots, dug from the root cellar where they lie sleeping in boxes of sand. They are earthy and sweet, the taste of the ground itself. Drink is essential too. You cannot drink the water. It is too cold and potentially unsafe. Instead, everyone, from the toddler to the old knight, drinks ale. The winter ale is brewed strong. It is murky, rich in calories, and slightly warm from the fermentation room. It provides a buzz that dulls the sensation of cold in the fingers and toes. In the kitchens, the activity never stops. The heat from the massive roasting spits is intense. Scullery boys, sweating despite the freezing temperatures outside, turn the spits where whole pigs or oxen roast for the evening feast. The fat drips into the fire, hissing and flaring up, casting wild shadows. These cooks are the guardians of the castle's energy. They know exactly how many barrels of flour remain in the granary. They know how many salted herring are left in the barrels for the lean days of Lent that are coming. They ration, they plan, and they cook. Eating in winter is a serious affair. It is not done casually. You eat quickly before the food goes cold. You eat heavily, building a layer of fat on your own body to mimic the insulation of the castle walls. And as you finish your meal, wiping the last of the gravy with a piece of bread, you feel a heaviness settle over you. The internal fire has been stoked. The body enters a state of digestion and rest. The cold of the great hall feels a little less biting. You are ready to face the afternoon darkness. The fire warms the hall. The pottage warms the blood. But if you must step away from the hearth, or, God forbid, go outside onto the battlements, you need portable protection. You need armor. Not of steel, which would freeze to your skin and suck the life out of you, but armor of fiber. In the modern world, we have synthetic jackets that weigh nothing yet keep us warm. The medieval solution was weight. To be warm was to be heavy. The process of dressing in a winter castle is a ritual of layering. It begins with the layer closest to the skin, the linen. We often imagine medieval people as dirty, unwashed masses, and while it is true that they rarely submerged their bodies in tubs of water during winter, doing so was considered dangerous, opening the pores to the pestilential air. They were obsessed with clean linen. The linen shirt, or camise, is the base layer. It is white, woven from flax. It feels cool and smooth against the skin. Its job is crucial. It wicks sweat and oils away from the body. A medieval noble might change this linen shirt every day, or even twice a day. By changing the linen, they are dry cleaning their bodies. The fresh linen rubs against the skin, scrubbing away dirt. Over the linen comes the insulation, wool. Wool is the miracle fiber of the Middle Ages. It is water-resistant, it traps heat even when wet, and it is durable. But it is itchy. That is why the linen underneath is so important. It protects the skin from the scratch of the wool. A man might pull on thick woolen hose, tight-fitting trousers that cover the legs and feet. A woman puts on a kirtle, a long woolen dress that drags slightly on the rushes. The wool is heavy, densely woven. It captures the body heat generated by the food we just ate and holds it close. But one layer of wool is not enough for the stone corridors. Over the kirtle or tunic goes the cotardie, or the sous-coat, another layer of wool, often lined. Lined with what? This brings us to the ultimate status symbol and the ultimate insulator: fur. In the 14th century, fur is not just fashion, it is survival. But the type of fur dictates who you are. If you are a servant or a peasant, your coat is lined with rabbit, cat, or lambskin. It is warm, practical, and smells slightly of the animal. You wear the fur on the inside, against the wool, to trap air. But if you are the lord of the castle, your winter wardrobe is a display of power. Your robes are lined with squirrel belly, thousands of tiny gray skins stitched together, or perhaps ermine, the white winter coat of the stoat with its distinctive black tail tip. This fur is incredibly dense. It stops the wind dead. When a noble walks through a drafty corridor, they are essentially walking inside a personalized sleeping bag. The weight of a fully lined winter robe can be 20 or 30 pounds. You move differently when you are wearing winter court clothes. You move slowly, deliberately. You take up space. And we must not forget the head. In a castle, heat rises and vanishes into the high vaulted ceilings. If you leave your head uncovered, you freeze. So everyone wears a hood. The hood, or chaperone, is a masterpiece of design. It covers the head, but it also has a capelet that falls over the shoulders, protecting the neck and upper chest from drafts. It frames the face, creating a pocket of still air in front of the nose and mouth. Men wear coifs, tight linen caps under their hoods. Women wear veils and wimples, wrapping layers of linen around their necks and chins, leaving only the eyes and nose exposed. This is not just modesty, it is scarf-like protection against the chill. Let us imagine stepping out into the courtyard now, fully dressed. You are wearing a linen shirt, a wool tunic, a fur-lined overrobe, thick woolen hose, leather boots lined with felt, a linen coif, and a heavy wool hood. You feel heavy. Your movements are restricted. But as the icy wind coming off the moat hits you, you feel nothing. The wind catches the rough wool of your outer cloak, but it cannot penetrate the leather and fur beneath. You are a walking fortress. There is a specific sensory experience to medieval winter clothing. It is the smell of wet wool when you come inside from the snow, a distinct animal scent. It is the sound of heavy fabric swishing against the floor rushes. It is the feeling of untying a dozen points and laces with frozen fingers when you finally retire to the solar. And there is the maintenance. At night, these heavy garments are not just thrown on a chair. They are brushed to remove mud and soot. They are hung near the fire to dry, but not too close, or the wool will scorch. The furs are beaten to keep them fluffy and insulating. For the people of the castle, clothing is their primary home. The stone walls are just the outer shell. The tunic and cloak are the true shelter. As long as the wool is dry and the fur is thick, the stone beast cannot bite them. But as the sun sets and the castle locks down for the long night, another challenge arises: the darkness. How do they cope when the sun vanishes at 4 p.m. and will not return for 16 hours? We must look to the light.
The sun has set. In the summer, the sunset is a lingering affair, painting the sky until late in the evening. But in the winter of the 14th century, the sun abandons the castle early. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the gray sky turns to a bruised purple, and then swiftly to absolute black. We are now entering the long dark. For the next 16 hours, the castle must create its own light. Modern humans have forgotten what true darkness looks like. We live in a world of perpetual twilight, bathed in the glow of street lamps and screens. But here, when the shutters are closed, the darkness is physical. It is heavy. It presses against your eyes. To navigate the castle without a light is to risk falling down a stone staircase or tripping into the fire pit. So the battle against the dark begins. It is a battle fought with fat and wick. In the great hall where the servants and soldiers gather, the air begins to fill with a distinct, pungent smell. It is the smell of tallow. Tallow candles are made from rendered animal fat, sheep or cow. They are the light of the common man. They burn with a smoky yellow flame, and as they melt, they release an acrid scent of cooking grease. It is not pleasant, but it is necessary. The servants place these tallow candles in iron sconces along the walls. The light they cast is feeble, barely pushing back the shadows. The corners of the hall remain swallowed by gloom. In this flickering light, the tapestries on the walls seem to move, the figures woven into them dancing in the corner of your eye. It is a time of superstition, where every shadow could be a ghost, and every creak of the floorboards a spirit. But if we ascend again to the Lord's sola, or the chapel, the scent changes. Here, the air smells sweet, like honey and summer flowers. This is the luxury of beeswax. Beeswax candles are expensive. Burning one is like burning gold. They burn clean, bright, and steady. In the solar, a candelabra of beeswax candles creates a golden island of civilization. The light reflects off the silver goblets and the polished oak furniture. Here, the night is not something to be feared, but a time for leisure. What do they do during these long frozen evenings? They cannot simply go to sleep at 5 p.m. The castle turns inward. The winter night is the time for the mind to work, since the body cannot labor in the fields. In the circle of light near the fire, a game is set up. Chess. It is the favorite pastime of the nobility. Two men sit hunched over a board of ivory and ebony, moving pieces in silence. The click of a knight capturing a pawn is the only sound in the room, save for the wind outside. Chess is more than a game. It is war practice, a way to keep the tactical mind sharp when the armies are snowed in. Others play tables, an ancestor of backgammon. The rhythmic rattle of bone dice in a leather cup is a familiar winter sound. There is gambling, laughter, and the passing of wine. And there is music. A lute player sits by the hearth. The strings are made of gut, and they struggle to stay in tune in the damp cold, but the melody is warm. He sings ballads of spring, of green fields and blooming trees, reminding everyone that winter is not eternal. The music drifts up into the rafters, mingling with the smoke. For the women, the evening is often spent reading or listening to reading. Books are rare treasures, handwritten on vellum. A single book might cost as much as a village. Someone with good eyesight and a steady candle reads aloud, a romance of Arthurian knights or the lives of saints. The listeners close their eyes, letting the words paint pictures that the gray winter landscape cannot provide. In the great hall below, the entertainment is rowdier. Servants tell stories. Ghost stories are a favorite in the dark months. They tell tales of monsters that roam the snow, of wolves that speak like men. They huddle closer together as the stories get scarier, finding comfort in their shared fear and shared warmth. There is a psychological rhythm to these nights. The darkness brings an intimacy that summer lacks. In summer, everyone is scattered, working outdoors. In winter, everyone is here, in this room, within the reach of the firelight. Barriers of rank soften slightly. The lord laughs at a jester's joke just as the servant does. They are all trapped on the same ship, sailing through the frozen night. But eventually the candles burn low. The tallow begins to sputter in a pool of grease. The beeswax is snuffed out to save for tomorrow. The fire is banked, covered with ash to keep the coals alive until morning. One by one, the islands of light vanish. The castle returns to the dark. But not everyone sleeps. While the Lord dreams under his furs, there are eyes that must remain open. There are those who must step out of the warmth and face the full fury of the night.
Leaving the great hall now feels like a physical blow. We push open a heavy door and step out onto the battlements, the high stone walkway that circles the castle tops. Here there are no tapestries, no fires, no spiced wine. There is only the wind. Up here, 50 feet above the ground, the wind has no mercy. It tears at your cloak, seeking any gap to freeze the skin beneath. This is the domain of the silent guardians, the night watch. To be a guard in winter is a test of endurance. You cannot wear too much heavy fur, for you must be able to move and fight if necessary. You cannot cover your ears completely, for you must listen for the approach of enemies. Metal is the enemy here. A guard does not touch his sword hilt or his helmet with a bare hand. At these temperatures, moist skin bonds instantly to freezing iron. To touch the metal is to lose skin. They wear thick leather gloves, greased with fat to repel the snow. They do not stand still. To stand still is to die. You see them pacing back and forth, a rhythmic stomping of boots on stone. 10 paces north, 10 paces south. Keep the blood moving, keep the toes from turning black. At intervals along the wall, there are small iron baskets, braziers, filled with glowing charcoal. They offer a pathetic amount of heat against the vast frozen sky, but they are lifesavers. A guard pauses for a moment, holding his hands over the coals, watching the red glow reflect in the ice that is formed on his beard. He takes a deep breath of the sulphurous smoke, then turns back to the dark horizon. He is watching for movement against the snow. He is listening for the crunch of footsteps. But mostly, he is fighting the urge to sleep. The cold is a lullaby, whispering that it would be so nice to just sit down, close your eyes and rest. The guard knows that if he listens to that whisper, he will never wake up. But there is another place in the castle that is awake, and it is perhaps the coziest place of all. Let us leave the freezing wall and descend into the courtyard, to the stables. The stable door opens with a heavy creak, and instantly the world changes. It is dark here, but it is not cold. In fact, it is surprisingly warm. The air is thick and rich. It smells of sweet hay, dried oats, old leather, and the earthy musked scent of horses. The stable is nature's heater. Dozens of large war horses and palfreys stand in their stalls. A horse is a massive generator of body heat. Their collective warmth raises the temperature of the stable significantly. It is a humid, living warmth, far gentler than the dry heat of the fire. The stable boys often sleep here, buried in the haylofts above the horses. It is a coveted spot. The hay is soft and insulates perfectly. Rising heat from the animals below keeps the loft toasty. Listening to the rhythmic chewing of the horses and their deep, slow breathing is a meditative sound, far more soothing than the snoring of the great hall. The horses are pampered in winter. They are the tanks of the medieval world, too valuable to lose to illness. They are covered in blankets of thick wool. Their water is warmed before they drink it to prevent colic. The grooms spend hours brushing them, stimulating their circulation. But horses are not the only animals seeking shelter. The castle is an ecosystem. In the shadows of the granary, cats patrol silently. They are the unseen guardians of the food supply. Winter drives rats and mice indoors towards the precious sacks of grain. The castle cats are lean, mean hunters. They are not pets, they are employees. But on a cold night, even a working cat seeks a warm lap. You might find them curled up near the oven in the bakery, or sleeping in the straw with the dogs. The dogs are everywhere. Greyhounds and mastiffs, the hunting companions of the Lord, sprawl in front of the great hall fire. They are living foot warmers. It is not uncommon for a lord to sleep with 3 or 4 large dogs on his bed. The term three-dog night, meaning a night so cold you need 3 dogs to keep you warm, is not a metaphor here. It is a practical measurement of temperature. Back on the battlements, the guard sees the first hint of grey in the east. The long dark is ending. The charcoal in his brazier has turned to white ash. His shift is over. Below him, the castle begins to stir. A rooster crows from the coop, a ragged, frozen sound. Smoke begins to puff vigorously from the kitchen chimney. The smell of baking bread drifts up, replacing the smell of the night's tallow. The silent guardian breathes a sigh of relief. He has survived the night. He descends the icy stairs, heading towards the warmth of the kitchen and a bowl of hot pottage. The sun is returning. The cycle begins again. But winter does not last forever. Even the longest siege of cold must eventually break. In our final chapter, we will look for the signs of hope.
Time moves slowly in the castle, but it does move. We have endured the biting frosts of January. We have survived the deep, silent snows of February. And now a subtle shift begins to happen in the air. But before the relief of spring arrives, the castle must face one final trial. It is a trial of both faith and stomach. Lent. As winter drags into March, the church calendars mark the beginning of the great fast. For 40 days leading up to Easter, the consumption of meat is forbidden. No more roasted boar, no more rich venison stews. To the modern mind, this seems like a cruel punishment to inflict during the coldest, hungriest time of the year. But in the medieval world, the sacred and the practical are often the same thing. Look into the pantry. The hooks that once held sides of bacon are bare. The salted beef is nearly gone. The decision to stop eating meat is not just spiritual discipline, it is resource management. The winter stores are exhausted. So, the diet changes. The cooks crack open the barrels of salted herring and dried cod, stockfish. These fish are hard as wood and must be beaten with hammers and soaked for days to become edible. The meals become simpler: bread, fish, and ale. It is a time of restraint. The castle holds its breath, stretching its last resources to the breaking point. The steward, the man responsible for the castle's supplies, walks the cellars with a worried frown. He counts the sacks of grain. He taps the wine barrels to hear how hollow they sound. This is the hungry gap, the dangerous bridge between the last of the winter stores and the first growth of spring. But then, one afternoon, the sound of the castle changes. For months, the background noise has been the howling wind or the dead silence of snow. But today, there is a new sound. Drip, drip, drip. It is the music of the thaw. On the south-facing roofs, the sun, now higher in the sky, strikes the icicles. They begin to weep. The water runs down the stone gargoyles, falling into the courtyard puddles with a rhythmic splashing. The moat, which has been a silent sheet of white for months, begins to groan. Deep cracks appear in the ice with loud gunshot-like reports. Dark veins of water open up, reflecting the blue sky. The river is waking up. The air changes too. It no longer smells only of wood smoke and old wool. There is a new scent, damp, earthy, and raw. It is the smell of mud. To a noble, mud is a nuisance. To a peasant,
It is a promise. It means the ground is softening. It means life can begin again. Inside the castle, the mood lifts. The siege is broken. The first warm day triggers a flurry of activity that rivals the harvest. It is the great cleaning. For months, the castle has been sealed tight. The air inside is stale, thick with the soot of 1,000 fires and the breath of 100 people. Now the heavy wooden shutters are thrown open. Sunlight, actual bright sunlight, floods the corridors, revealing the dust motes dancing in the air. Servants haul the old matted rushes from the floor, rushes that have absorbed a winter's worth of spills and dirt, and carry them out to be burned. The stone floors are swept clean, fresh herbs are scattered, winter savory, sage, and the first green shoots of straw. The scent of the rooms transforms from musty to fresh. In the solar, the heavy tapestries are taken down and beaten in the courtyard to remove the dust. The stone walls, naked for the first time in months, look pale but sturdy. They have done their job. They have held the heat. They have protected the life inside. On the battlements, the guards shed their heaviest furs. They stand with their faces turned toward the sun, soaking in the warmth, watching the snow retreat from the hills. The white blanket pulls back to reveal patches of brown and gray, and soon the first miraculous vivid green of grass. The roads are open again. Messengers arrive on muddy horses, bringing news from other castles, from the king, from the world beyond the valley. The isolation is over. The island of stone is reconnected to the mainland of humanity. In the chapel, the gloom of Lent gives way to the celebration of Easter. Candles, hundreds of beeswax candles are lit, not just to fight the dark, but to celebrate the light. The fasting ends. The first fresh meat of the season is served. The ale flows. There is laughter in the great hall, louder and freer than the huddled whispers of January. We have made it. As we look back at the castle now, standing strong against the blue spring sky, we see it differently. It is not just a pile of rocks. It is a vessel, a ship of stone that carried a community through the ocean of winter. We have walked its cold corridors. We have sat by its roaring fires. We have tasted the salt of its pantry and felt the weight of its wool. We have seen how fragile and yet incredibly resilient human life is. Survival was not guaranteed. It was an art form. It was a daily practice of patience, planning, and endurance. And now, you too can rest. The storm has passed. The fire has burned down to gentle, glowing embers that pulse like a slow heartbeat. The heavy furs are warm around you. The castle sleeps, but it is a light sleep now, ready to wake with the dawn. The stone beast is at peace, and so are you. Sleep well.